Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today on the Kinship Care Week on 2022. We are going to discuss about welfare benefits and how is that impacting with Kinship Allowance. I will unmute everyone just now. And as I said, if you do have questions, put them in the chat. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session who's not going to be, is not going to be recorded. Okay, my name is Georgiana Bujag. I am a support and advocacy worker for the Kinship Care Advice Service for Scotland. And I will give you an overview on the benefit system. This is us, our team. We have Linda on the helpline. We have Jennifer, Jackie, we have Anne, we have Rona, Susan, Simon. So we are now part of Adoption UK. And I'm going to show you what we offer. Our service, we listen, and I think that's our, at the base of our service is listening kinship carers and their needs. And we also provide advocacy work if they need to apply for child benefit, for universal credit. There are complex issues, or sometimes you need some legal advice on residence orders or kinship care orders, or sometimes you just might want to talk with us. We also have a kinship advisory group, and it's comprised of kinship carers, and we work with different organizations, making sure we hear kinship carers, we hear their voices. And we also want to hear your stories, which will be then shared with the Scottish government. And through KCASS, we are hoping to influence the legislation because there's still so much to do. The Kinship Care Service started years ago, over a decade ago. And because of the work we've done, we managed to get in 2015 a change in legislation, and we got parity between payments with foster carers and kinship carers. And now kinship carers are actually acknowledged. Finally, the work is acknowledged and it's cherished. So that's why we have this Kinship Care Week, to raise awareness. And we hope that the situation of kinship carers will improve over time as a result of our work and advice that we provide. So when we talk about legal status, I don't want you to think that I'm labeling a child as a looked after or not looked after. The child you're in care, it's your grandchild, it could be your niece, it could be a child's a friend who maybe passed away. So these looked after and non-looked after terms are just legal terms that could be put in a category, but that doesn't mean your child has to be put in this category. And your child is your child, the one that you're looking after. And I want to make that clear. This is purely for legal purposes. So when we're talking about looked after child, we see a looked after child who has been placed by the local authority. So you had social work involved. The parents sign away Section 25. So they gave away the rights to the local authority because they couldn't look after the child, or the child was placed with you in an emergency situation or under a child protection order because they might have been at risk. Or some of you went and were attending children's hearing to see the best interest of the child, or the local authority social work departments decided to go for a permanence order to the court for a residence order, but that has to be with the involvement of social work. And you will see later on as we progress, there are different benefits and different entitlements for children who are placed with social work and for children who were placed in a family arrangement. So when we look at the non-looked after child, so a non-looked after, it has to be in two categories. The first one is a private family arrangement. You decided with the parents that you as a grandparent or as an uncle, auntie, you will be looking after the child temporarily. So this is a private family arrangement. There was no social work because the child is still with someone that is to be trusted. The child is safe. So social work department has no concerns about this child. So this will be a different benefit, a different entitlement compared to the one that the social worker placed. And sometimes from the look after category, once the kinship assessment is completed, the social worker decides that they don't have to be involved, the child is safe, the carer has a residency order. So this is the residency order with the help of the social worker, and I will tell you why this is important later on. So the social work decides that the child is safe, they will go through a court order, get a kinship care order or a residency order. So they will be then placed in the non-looked after category. So this will also be a different entitlement than the one with the private family arrangement. And with the under the family private arrangement, it could also be a person who is appointed as a guardian. And you will see that this is important because you get other entitlements. So this is when kinship care, even now, this is the first slide. This is where we realize that actually it's complex. It's extremely complex just from the start. In your thinking, oh my goodness, but what if the child was placed by the social worker and then I got the residency order myself? That's a different entitlement. What if it was a private arrangement and then the social worker got involved? There's so many things that can be interchangeable. And then when we assess a kinship situation, we need a full background. And there has been cases when kinship carers decided that it's not important to tell us that they have a residency order because that is a private matter. So then we advised on the information we had. So the information was, of course, incorrect and it didn't apply to their situation. So when you're calling us, you know we are confidential. We are not going to contact anyone unless there is a safeguarding for a child. Then we will contact the appropriate local authority. But if when you look on Kinship Care Service for Scotland, you're thinking, yes, it's confidential. Everything we discuss, it stays between us. We're not going to share with anyone. So it's good to be honest and truthful, because at this stage, only when we ask you, how did the child came to live with you? And kinship carers will say, because the mom and dad couldn't look after. That's okay. We don't have to know the issue, unless sometimes there is this stigma that kinship carers become kinship carers because parents are abusing drugs or alcohol. And that is one scenario, but there's also mental health involved. There is also disabilities. There's also bereavement and imprisonment. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's not just one size fits all for kinship carers, and it's complex. So you can call us and say, yes, the child couldn't live with the parents, but it's important if it's imprisoned, because that changes a lot along the way. You could be entitled to more. Or if you say the children could return to their parents in a few years, if they're going to a rehab facilitation, they will be able to return. That changes again the entitlement. So it is extremely complex. So when you give us a call, you need to know it's confidential, and you have to be honest in order to get the best advice possible for you and your child. So this is legal status, and it's a lot. Let's move and see a few entitlements when we consider legal. looked after, right? So looked after. So there's two categories. In reality, it's three of them. And depending on that, benefits could change. But I don't want to give you too much. This is for you to understand where could you be. And if you have questions regarding this, obviously we can address it on a basis, we're going to address it as it comes, so we don't have to know exactly. Okay. So looked after, as I said, it's placed with the kinship carer under any of this section. So when you're looking at your situation and you're thinking, yes, I could be looked after because I was placed and the parents gave away their rights under this section. And I remember talking about the other section, or you just think, oh, I don't know any about these sections. It's so much, I would not know. It's our legal stuff, I don't know. And that's okay. You will just remember children's hearing, Scottish courts, residence order. So then you will think, okay, so the child was looked after. So that means I am entitled to, why am I entitled? So these are the payment mechanisms, and I will not tell you too much. Some of you already know that you are being paid a kinship allowance for a looked after child. And you usually as a kinship carer, you will not know these sections, but depending on the local authority, you might be entitled to child benefit and child tax credit. Well, not so much now, but universal credit and child addition to pension credit. So this is, you know, that the social worker tells you, yeah, you're entitled to child benefit, you can claim universal credit, and you can claim pension credit. And you say, okay, good. But then there's other kinship carers who have, they can only get child benefit. And it's important when you call us to tell us the local authority. You can say, I am from Glasgow, I am from Midlothian, I am from West Lothian, and then we will check it for you. So you don't have to know all these things. It's just the thing that there's always this feeling that, well, why can you claim child benefit and child element and universal credit, and I can only get child benefit? Because there is also sometimes in the city, they will give you less money, but you will be able to claim more. Or in the Shire, they will give you more money, but you might not be able to claim other benefits. So it depends on the local authority. And this shows that the Scottish government gives different budgets to different cities and shires. And that's why sometimes you might get, you might be able to claim more, and other times you might not be able to claim much. So that means if you're not able to claim much and you can only claim child benefit, that means that the local authority gives you more money than it will give to someone else who can claim more. Because don't worry, they're not getting more. Everything they keep claiming, it's deducted. And I'll show you what I mean. So under looked after, as I showed you, you can claim under a few sections. You can claim universal credit. But what I'm suggesting in this slide is that you are not entitled to universal credit unless you get it in writing. All you need every time as a kinship carer, when problems arise and situation is complex, if the social worker gives you in writing that you can claim universal credit, then you are claiming universal credit. And I'm telling you this because we had so many kinship carers under Section 50 who are claiming the child element, but the child element is included in the kinship care allowance because they are a looked after child, because they had social work involvement. So then I would just suggest you are not entitled to universal credit unless stated otherwise. We had people going to money advice and they've been advised to claim universal credit, and now they have overpayments a lot of overpayments. We actually been contacted more now because it still seems that in the system, in HMRC, sometimes they still don't understand that kinship carers are not foster carers. Kinship carers have parity with foster carers. That means they can get the same kinship allowance, but that doesn't mean kinship carers are foster carers. Foster carers are trained. Foster carers cannot claim child benefit. And sometimes we had cases where a kinship carer was fighting with HMRC that the council is deducting their child benefit, and HMRC insisted they should not be getting child benefit. And that was a year and a half. And they contacted our service, and we contacted HMRC, and we explained them the legislation, we explained the differences, which they should have already knew. But we explained it to them, and we got the kinship care backdatement, and it was 1,500 pounds in child benefit. So with universal credit, it's better if you have an underpayment than an overpayment, because when you contact us and you say, am I entitled to universal credit? And we say, okay, which local authority is it? And you say, it's Aberdeen City. And I say, okay, Aberdeen City, I know from my spreadsheet and from their kinship policy, they're paying under Section 22. That will mean you can get child benefit, and you can also claim universal credit. And if you call me from the Aberdeenshire, I know that Aberdeenshire pays under Section 50. So I will advise you, based on the council information, that you should not claim universal credit. But then you say, but I live in the Shire, in Aberdeenshire, and I claim child benefit and universal credit. And I ask you, okay, does the council know? Yes, they give me a letter. Okay then, which means they are deducting it from your kinship care allowance. And some of you might think, well, actually, I haven't heard of a kinship allowance. And I will explain you why, because you are on a non-looked after arrangement. And that's why you're thinking, I don't know about kinship allowance. I don't know about all this. I only know about child benefit. Don't worry, we're getting to you as well. So under looked after with the kinship allowance, you need to check with the social worker, and social worker will keep you right. And they will tell you, yes, you can claim universal credit, and we will be deducting it from the kinship allowance, because kinship allowance, it has the child element. So you cannot double claiming. That's an overpayment. So you need, it's not your responsibility. Obviously, you should be given all this information at the beginning. And I know sometimes this is not possible. But when you have an overpayment, you're thinking, why was it not advised? Now I'm in all this debt and nobody advised me. And then you're looking on your kinship care allowance, and in the letter, the social work actually put it down, but they just forgot to tell you because they thought the most important thing is to be sure that the child is safe. And then you're thinking, oh my God, that's a lot. It is a lot. That's why you have us. That's why you give us a call and you say, I don't know what's going on. The child is here. I thought it's going to be just for 3 weeks. I love him to bits. I don't know. I'm struggling financially. Where should I go? The social worker gave me your number. And then when we respond to your call, we look, okay, what is the circumstance? And we will assess and we will keep you right. So now the non-looked after, you are not entitled to kinship allowance. And I will explain you why. So the first circumstance will be you were looked after. Yes, you were looked after and you had a social work involved, and then the social worker decided, okay, the child is safe, you have a residency order, we will pay you just the residency money. So that will mean less money, but you are now able to claim child benefit, which you were able anyway, and universal credit. So that will mean you'll be able to claim the state benefits to top it up. And if it's an informal arrangement between the parents and the grandparents, or the parents and their friends, or the parents and the uncles, then that means you have no kinship allowance and you cannot claim. And if you went ahead and applied for a residence order under a private arrangement with no social work, you will not be entitled to kinship care allowance. You are not going to be entitled for residency money. That changes. It has to be the social work to be involved to assess your situation. So here is the inequality between looked after and non-looked after. And you're thinking, why am I being treated differently than someone who has a social worker just because I did not have a social work and we didn't bother anyone? Why should I be getting less and not be getting kinship allowance? So this is still something we're looking into, and we've been raising it time and time again. And it's not only inequality between, we thought if we sort the inequality between kinship carers and foster care and we get this parity, that will be problem solved. But now with our casework, we realized that there is more to it and it's becoming more complex. So we are still gathering information and we're still doing casework. And this is the reality. The non-looked after in private arrangements, so that means they did not have social work, they are able to claim everything: child benefit, universal credit, pension credit, guardian's allowance, but no kinship allowance. I will show you at the end that the difference between kinship and non-kinship, it's quite huge. So when you contact our service, we will always put your case into our social policy. That's how we managed to get a parity years ago. We always shared our reports, and that's how we got things changed. And we're working on this to see what else can we do. So if it's a non-looked after, these are the circumstances. But even in here, when you look, you're thinking, yes, I did not have the social work involved. So that means I'm non-looked after. That means you are non-looked after or informal arrangement. So we will call you, which we don't like labels, but we will explain you that you are an informal kinship carer. A formal one is when they had a formal recognition from the social work department and they were told, yes, your child is at risk. But an informal arrangement means the child is at risk, but you figure out within the family. So I've already explained this, that you might still have social work involvement, but it's minimal. The social work came and tell you, yes, get a residency order, the child will stay with you. And you think, but I had social work involvement. Yes, but under the guidance, because we don't have a legislation, under the guidance, that still makes you an informal kinship care because they were not assessing you for weeks. An approved and formal kinship care, a formal one, takes minimum of, well, should be maximum of 12 weeks and 3 days of kinship care assessment. So if you've not been assessed and the social worker came to your house and said, yeah, get a residency order for the child, they don't have to be involved. And some people are happy not to have the social work involved, but you're missing this kinship allowance. But this kinship allowance also comes with responsibilities, with continuous meetings. And some carers actually said, I don't want the extra money, I just want my peace. I don't want to go through all these meetings every single week. They're coming here, I have to go there. It's too much for me. I don't have time for this. I just want to focus on the child. So some carers might not want to have the social work involved. Other carers are happy because they think it's a great help and support, especially going through breakdown of relationships. If you're thinking, I'm sure some of you still have the parents around the child, and you think, oh my God, this breaks my relationship with my own daughter or with my son, because they see me as the bad person. So it's also this breakdown of relationship. Or you might think, oh, I have no one. and then the social work comes and they provide the support and the guidance. So it has its goods and it has its bads, and we're trying to raise awareness and explain the difficulties and explain your entitlement. And if you're not sure, you can always have our helpline, and a one-to-one will be more appropriate. So the guardian's allowance, it's only for people who, so it's for both looked after and non-looked after. So if one parent is dead and the other parent is in the prison or hospital, I mean long-term prison or hospital, or we don't know about the whereabouts, then you are able to claim guardian's allowance as both looked after and non-looked after. And we talk about state pension credit. So state pension credit, looked after people, carers, that means if you have social work involvement, if you're claiming Kinship Care allowance, you are not being under the guidance, you are not entitled to claim state pension credit. So pension credit is basically a top up of your pension, of your state pension. Your state pension is as minimum as it can be, and you need a top up. So that will be the pension credit. So under this, for example, we have carers who are looking after children on an informal arrangement, and they cannot claim universal credit and the child element. So if they cannot claim that because they're over state pension, then they can claim this pension credit, and the pension credit has an addition for the child. So this is an extra support that can only be accessed by non-looked after children in formal arrangements or private arrangements. They don't have to be residency order, but also it's available for residency order. So as long as you did not have social work involvement, you're not getting kinship allowance, you can claim the state pension credit. Sometimes a social worker might say you could claim this, but under the regulation, that's not the case. So if you have a kinship allowance and you're claiming state pension credit, that's an overpayment, and that will, and then when they will DWP, the Department of Work and Pension, will realize that you're getting this, they will come after the money. They always do. And you're thinking, oh, this is great, this is the support I needed, but it's actually not. And I know how this can go, and it's always good to double check. I'm always saying, write it down, get it in writing, double check, get it in writing, double check, always, 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 because you don't want an overpayment, not even for 10 pounds, because 10 pounds today, it could be 1,000 pounds in a few years, and you don't want that. You don't want to be in debt. So depending on the income, council tax reduction, it's available for both looked after and non-looked after. And you're thinking, I've never done a council tax reduction. How do you do that? So it's a form. And if you're struggling with the form, and usually Citizens Advice Bureau were helping people with the forms face-to-face, but because of the pandemic that changed. So we could help you. If you're a kinship carer and you need the help with any form, council tax reduction, child benefit, even PEEP for you, for your child, DLA. Now it's not disability living allowance, it's called something else. I need to like update my, because there's always changing, and I need to update it. I'm still on the old system because it's not that. How is it called, Susan? Disability, no, children disability living, what was that called? That's bad.
Child disability payment.
Child disability payment. Yes, it's not disability living allowance, it's child disability payment. So if your child has a disability, we will help you with the forms. So coming back to council tax, it's both for looked after and non-looked after. You just have to complete a form depending on your income. So if you have a high income, then you will not be entitled. How you can check you're entitled to all of this? you can contact the Citizens Advice Bureau and you can pop in and ask for a benefit check. You can contact your social work department and ask for a benefit check, and they'll probably do that for you, or they will send it to Citizens Advice Bureau, or they will send it to us, because we can also do a benefit check and see what are your entitlements. So if we see you're entitled to council tax reduction because of your background or because of your situation, not everyone is entitled. So that's why we say depending on your income. But it's good for you to think, oh, I'm going through a financial difficulty. What can I get? How would you know? You give us a call, and we will keep you right. So council tax reduction, pension credit. So that's the state pension credit I mentioned, but it says for looked after, but it's not. It's mostly for, why is that there? I should get in trouble for that. No, pension credit's only for non-looked after as per guidance. So I apologize for that. I should have double checked. I take full responsibility. So pension credit only for non-looked after, because we've seen the guidance before. Looked after with kinship allowance cannot get it. And then we have disability living allowance, which is the child living payment. And then we have the carers allowance. So you will be able to claim that, and now they will all be under a different name. But this is something, because, so I'm telling you why I kept this. Not everyone has yet been transferred to all these benefits. So people have been transferred last year from Social Security Scotland. They have been only a few regions. So some of you might have heard about children living allowance, children living payment, but most of you know about disability living allowance. So once Social Security changes the name for everyone, and they will be implemented and people will know, then we will update it. So no matter, so that will be disability living allowance. And if you have a child with a disability, you will be able to claim carers allowance. And that's different than kinship care allowance. So don't get it mixed up, because it's a lot, and the names are quite similar. So carers allowance for both looked after and non-looked after children. Crisis grants available, Best Start grant pregnancy and baby payment. This is paid for kinship carers if they had the baby placed with them. So you can access this depending on your income. And it's the same with the Best Start grant early learning payment, with the school age payment, Best Start foods. And there's also Scottish government, they also put in place the carers allowance supplement, which is paid twice per year or once per year. I will need to check that. But you have to be entitled and you have to register with the Social Security Social Security Scotland. And how do you know about that? You give us a call and you say, I think I might be entitled to this, and we give you the number, or we explain you, or we help you with the forms. And then you can also get, depending on your income, again, funeral support payment, job start payment, young care grant. So some of them can be, you might be getting it, you might not. It's again on your situation. And I will explain you the kinship care. So you would think that someone who has a kinship care allowance, they're getting lots of money. And that's actually not the case. Because let's say the kinship allowance is £100 per week. You say, oh my God, you're getting extra £100 and child benefit and universal credit. No, they're not. They're getting kinship care allowance, and then it's deducting, they are deducting the child benefit, and if they're getting universal credit or pension credit. So pension credit together with child benefit, these are all deducted from this £100, and they're still left with £15 and 30 pence. Let's just say this is a situation, it's not the realistic one. I've just made up all this because some local authorities only pay between, depending on the age. So when you look at kinship care allowance, okay, I will finish this, and then at the end I will show you what I mean. an example on the website. You can tell me a name of a local authority, and then I will show you their kinship care payments and the rates. So I will explain you, because £100, not everyone, some people are getting £60. So it really depends on the local authority, because every local authority has different budgets. That's because of the Scottish government. They give them different budgets, and then they decide how to spread it around. We're almost done. We're almost there. Okay, so this was our benefits introduction. It's a lot. It's complex. Don't get discouraged. You don't have to know that. You just need to write it down and double check. That's all you have to do, which is, again, a lot, because you're looking after children, and writing down and keeping a record of meetings or of how much you're getting. It's a lot, but always having a book, because it can come against you, and it's not how things should be. But from my experience, most of the times things do go wrong. And when things go wrong, it can be a misunderstanding. It can be an overpayment because of misunderstanding. And then you're going back and thinking, who advised me this that I should be getting? Because then you want to go back and tell them they were wrong, and now they're in difficulties, and obviously held them accountable, because we had those cases. So I'm going just to mention a few services that could be useful for kinship carers. We have Who Cares Scotland, Children's First, Scottish Families affected by alcohol and drug. We have our FASD. So if you think your child has been exposed to prenatal alcohol, there is a helpline available, because some children might behave differently than other children, and you think, this is such a bad child. No, it could be because they have been exposed to prenatal alcohol. So we have this helpline that we're working with. It's part of our, it's part of Adoption UK. It's called FASD Hub. And you can also have these other services, Child Bereavement UK, Child Poverty Action Group in Scotland, Children's Health Scotland. So you, depending on where you are, you might have heard of some, you might have not heard of others, depending on your region. And if you want to take a screenshot, like I think you already know, because you've contacted our service, so you know our helpline. We're open Monday to Friday from 10 till 2:30. So if you cannot speak, you can leave us a message and we will call you back maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. We have these opening lines where we're taking live calls. It has been extremely busy lately, so sometimes you might have someone might have called you back in a few days, but we're still calling back. We're keeping a note of your voice message, so when you call us and you don't get hold of between 10 and 2:30 Monday to Friday, you leave a voice message with your name and phone number, and we call you back. We also have an email address, advice@kinshipsco.org. We have a Facebook if you want to connect with us and keep up to date if you're using Facebook, Twitter, and we also have a website where you can check all of our events, trainings on therapeutic parenting, on trauma-informed practice, or on trainings like this. Anything you would like to ask, I'm going to stop the presentation.